But let's talk to Ross Clark now. He's got a big column in The Sun today. The inquiry must root out racist attitudes of those who turned a blind eye to gang rape. Ross, a very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike.
We've spoken this morning to a couple of guests, Sarah Pochin just now, and also to Peter Blexley this morning, because we had a call from a police officer who said he doesn't understand why many of these crimes, well, all of them really, have not been categorised as either racially aggravated crimes or hate crimes, because they really are, aren't they?
Well, yes, I think there's a perfectly good case for doing that. From some of the attitudes that we've learned through this crisis. But, I think the underlying thing is that most Britons would, I think, agree with the proposition that people who commit crimes should be prosecuted according to what they've done, not on the basis of the colour of their skin, their religion, or anything else. Now, it is true there are some on the far right who would like to make, hay with this scandal and use it in order to get at certain communities. But, on the other side, we've had for years and years and years, we had people who were consider themselves enlightened liberals, but were effectively pursuing this racist policy of excusing serious criminal wrongdoing on the basis that of somebody's colour of their skin. Because they were Pakistani heritage, they wanted to sort of brush the problem under the carpet, pretend it didn't exist, because they feared it would impact on their sort of glorious vision of diverse Britain and so on. And it's that latter group who are the sort of most influential, far more influential than the far right. But they cannot seem to see that they are being just as racist as those people on the far right who, would want to try to, exploit this for their own political purposes.
But the fact is, anybody who's accused of exploiting it for political purposes doesn't understand really what the origin of all of this was. The origin of all of this was the criminal acts themselves. Because it was, and indeed, as you mentioned in the piece, the first time you came across any mention of these rape gangs was when there was a potential sort of documentary designed to expose the British National Party.
Yes, this was back in about 2006. The BBC ran a panorama expose of the BNP, and part of that was sort of undercover film footage of Nick Griffin, and then leader of the BNP, talking about rape gangs, essentially. And, like most people in this country, I've probably never heard of, this phenomenon before of, gangs of Pakistani men exploiting white working class girls. And like most viewers, I suspect I thought, well, that's just being made up by the BNP to rouse racial tensions between communities, and it can't possibly be true, can it?
Right.
But we then learned, to our horror, that it really was true.
Yeah.
And
then you found out just not just that it was true, but that it was on an industrial scale that it was going on.
On an industrial scale, far more than I think even the BNPs were sort of making out. But if you want to encourage the far right, there's no better way to do it than to try to sort of cover up this kind of thing, because what those people and agencies did by trying to cover this up was hand the initiative to the BNP and others on the far right. If been open about it to begin with, then there would have been nothing there for the far right. But I'm afraid by the huge cover up and the excuses given and the failure to prosecute on the grounds that it might inflame racial tensions, that has had a far more damaging effect in the long term.
Of course it has. And how confident are you that this inquiry will actually be properly run, will find proper targets, will go after people, and will get those people for being complicit, not just in the perpetrating of the acts, but in the cover-up itself? Because that's what a lot of people are saying to me is really important. Of course, Labour will say it's all about the victims, and yes, of course it is, but it's also about the people who covered up for those perpetrators for decades, and for people who got away with it not just the people who actually carried out the rapes, but for the people who didn't allow the police to investigate and prosecute them.
Well, that's absolutely right. I mean, the worst thing that could happen now is that this inquiry just concentrate on the rape gangs themselves and what they were doing, and fail to address properly
Yeah.
the racist attitudes among police, social services, and other agencies, which failed to prosecute these gangs on the basis that it would, rifle community tensions. And it's those that should really be the focus of this inquiry. I mean, obviously what the rapists themselves have done, they belong in court. We've had court cases. We should have many more court cases. But what the inquiry itself should concentrate is on the cover-up,
Yeah.
on how this offending was going on an industrial scale, and nobody was, taking it seriously, trying to belittle it and refusing to investigate, and also blaming the victims. So one of the worst aspects of this is that the girls who were being raped were sort of, blame themselves,
Yeah.
Themselves blamed for it. So, the lifestyles they were leading, it's all their own fault for getting, that's not how child abuse should work. Our attitudes to child abuse work, and it doesn't work in any other sense. We don't blame the victims of Jimmy Savile for their own abuse, for example,
No.
and neither should we in this case.
Well, no, absolutely not. Ross, good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. Ross Clark, their columnist at The Sun, with a big piece in the paper today saying how the inquiry must root out racist attitudes, and he means by that the racist attitudes of those people who are protecting the Pakistani rape gangs, particularly those who turned a blind eye to that gang rape. And as he says, it is a stain on our society, as Yvette Cooper has said, but it also is true that there are many people who were behind this cover-up who were very influential in our society. These people who tend to dominate police, constabularies, council, social services and the judiciary lack the insight to see that they are just as guilty of racism and prejudice as anybody else who's accused of being on the far right. Absolutely right. Absolutely true.